Their true name is the Lakota. The word Sioux is a French word. The word Sioux, meaning a French word, means cutthroat. The word Sioux as a French word with its definition did not fit the true culture of the Lakota peoples. Steve, William's younger brother, and I were the same age, used to identify with the Lakota. We identified with Sitting Bull. We identified with Crazy Horse. We identified with Chief Gall. We identified with all the 8 ethnic groups that made up the so-called Sioux, or rather the Lakota nation of people, Native Americans at that time. And so I says, what do you mean? He says, who are the Sioux? I said, their name is not the Sioux. You know their name is the Lakota. He says, and Bobby, we are not Negroes. We are African Americans. We have a line of descent, just like Irish American, who are Italian American, or so on. I said, oh, okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. But I sit and listen some more, and they got to talking about the Black Star shipping lines that Garvey had started. There wasn't no shipping line started in America. Yes, it was, Bobby. Brother started a Black Star shipping lines. They had 4 ships. He had an economic program. It wasn't just about going back there. I said, oh, no kidding. And I said, dang, I said, you guys talk about Africa and the kingdoms of Africa. I didn't know there was no kingdoms in no Africa. I grew up with the notion that Tarzan ran Africa. Here I was, I get A's in mathematics, C in English, but A's in mathematics. And my reference point to Africa was a Tarzan movie. You know, some white guy swinging on the mountain, you know what I mean? He's the smartest thing around all the Native American people, all the African people there. This guy, Tarzan, could talk to the animals. Tell them, herd of elephants to go over there and beat up that adversary, and them elephants go over there and stomp on them. You know what I mean? This is the caricatures of reference points, of false representation manifested in movies that kids thought that, wow, you know, us black kids and the white kids and the Mexican kids, and all of us thought that Tarzan was the mess, man. He was it, you know. And I says, man, I got to learn something more about black people. I says, now, Africa, William. He says, read the book Jomo Kenyatta, Facing Mount Kenya. He says, that's one of the private bookstores right down there. They got it right down there. I ran in there and bought the book, went home 2 blocks up the street. I lived across the street from Merritt College. Went to work. And in between inspecting engine frames or exhaust housing for the Gemini missile program, I sit down at my desk in my little, and read this book by Jomo Kenyatta. The title of the book is called Facing Mount Kenya, about a young black man who left Kenya and went to England and got him a degree, came to America, got him another degree, studied anthropology, etc. But yet when he came back home, you know, he became involved and helped to organize his people out from under the yoke of English colonialism over the country of Kenya. Jomo Kenyatta. I was shocked. Tarzan don't run no Africa. But it put me on the trail of something. It made me sit down and take time. I got to know my history. I got to know what the heck's going on. And so they told us that the people in the Afro-American Association have book discussions. I said, well, I want to come to one of them book discussions. What book they discussing? E. Franklin Frazier's Black Bourgeoisie. Oh, yeah? I said, what's that? You can get there. I went down and bought the book. So, I met some guy. I met Huey again. Huey was standing up there. You know, Huey was a pretty boy. Little girls and sisters liked him. You know, they stood there. And Huey was saying, and therefore, we should refer to ourselves as African American or Afro American. It is correct social science reference as to who we are and what we are about as people to perpetuate misrepresentation such as Negro and Negra and everything, and even the insidious term colored people. I think that perpetuates a level of brainwashing. And I was saying, dang, I said, this guy, he was articulate, cool. But my point is, that's where I came from. A college student with a full-time job in a Gemini missile program with a lot of trades and skills to back me up. Okay? And I got myself into researching and studying. The next thing I know, I'm reading and digesting W.E.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction. I'm reading and digesting Marvel J. Herskovits's book, Myth of the Negro Past. I'm reading and digesting Dr. Herbert Apthacker's works of dealing with his documentation of all the wars that African Americans have fought in the United States, and his other documentation of the 250 slave revolts from the year 1800 to 1859. A documentation of 250 slave revolts? I mean, I'd been taught that black folks were passive. I remember some high school teachers saying, well, I don't know, maybe sometimes the slaves could like their situation in slavery because they could sit on the stoop and play the banjo. You know? But now I'm reading a book years later. This guy's talking about Gabriel Prosser in 1800 who organized 5,000 in some kind of slave revolt. Then Denmark Vesey, you know what I mean? And then Nat Turner who went on a rampage. And that shook up a whole lot of races. This is during the period of slavery. He says what Dr. Herbert Apthacker documented was these 250 slave revolts involves 10 or more slaves being involved in one kind of revolt or another from the year 1800 to 1859. That's a lot of resistance. What's going on there? And then I'm getting this other understanding of what Frederick Douglass represented. This man articulating the insidiousness of what the Declaration of Independence and July 4th is supposed to be about, you know what I mean, as it's related and compared to this existence of slavery. It's hey, I'm going to, W.E.B. Du Bois documenting how 168,000 black men and women, black men particularly, were enlisted into the Northern Union Army during the Civil War in this country. 168,000 and 38,000 died to help shape this country, to help get rid of and fight in all its complex ways against that institution of slavery when the Civil War came about in this country. How there were quite a few black congressmen in the Reconstruction period, duly elected to political office. You know, and then you have to reflect and read that and digest that and look around in 1962, 63. And you're trying to figure out how can you end this. And you hear terms and phrases, and somebody say institutionalized racism, so you want to rush to find out what really is meant by institutionalized racism, you know. I says, whoa, wait a minute here. Yeah, I got to find out about this. You know, normally I didn't go to church anymore because I got tired of preachers, terrorizing me with fire and brimstone and burning in hell, and they did it every Sunday. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm tired of that. You know what I mean? I can't do nothing. You know what I mean? Like George Clooney's player said, I can't do nothing, man. So I got tired of going to the church house, you know, with that. And then Martin Luther King was coming to town. In these 8-9 months I was into studying my African-American history, I got on a new path where I was going to understand this. And I said, I'm going to go hear this preacher here. He's different. He's even different from my Aunt Zelma. This brother's telling us what to do. Because my Aunt Zelma, my mother's twin sister Thelma, my mother's name is Thelma, and my mother's sister is Zelma. Now, Mama's passive, identical twin, Aunt Zelma's aggressive. So, you know, Aunt Zelma, you're going to burn in hell. You're going to, and that fire's just going to lick you up and it's just going to be burning. That's Aunt Zelma. I mean, one day I'm in the back room and her son is there. We're 12 years old. And I done fooled around and got ahead of the conversation because I used to read a lot of astronomy and read a lot of little science stuff that I liked, you know. And sometimes you get in debates with other kids, you know. So it's all four of us and 3 or 4 of us and of other kids in the community in the back room. And I'm saying, no, it ain't. No, it ain't. It's 25,000 miles all the way around the earth. 25,000 miles. And then the earth spin on its own axis at 1,000 miles an hour. And then the earth take a 600 million mile trip around the sun every 365 days. I'm just carrying on, but I just knew my stuff, you know what I mean? And Aunt Zelma walking there, shut up that old science mess, boy. Maul my head, twist my ear, and you're going straight to hell with that science mess. Boy, Aunt Zelma, boy, she was a mess, boy. some months later, some months later, Aunt Zelma was out. The family, for whatever reason, wound up at the San